Hi everyone, it's Darlene. Welcome back for another card. Today's card is for the Vellum Challenge for June. I'm using the Simon Says Stamp Artful Flowers set, the Stampin' Up! Fancy Fan embossing folder, some vellum, and my Kuretake Gansai Tambi watercolors. Now I'm going to pull these watercolor palettes up with a paper piercer. I find that that's the easiest way to pull them out of the container here. I'm going to use three colors. I'm going to use number 42, number 50, and number 139. So it's a yellow, a blue, and a purple. First I'm going to stamp my Artful Flowers on my vellum with some Versamark ink, and I'm using Basil 40-pound vellum, which I find is not too thin, not too thick. It's just the perfect weight. So once I stamp these with Versamark, I'm going to sprinkle them with some white embossing powder. I love the look of white embossing powder on vellum. It's just so pretty. And then I'm going to set it using my Stampin' Up! Heat tool. Now this tool has two settings, a low and a high, and I'm going to use the low. It takes a little longer to heat set it, but it's worth it because you really avoid a lot of the warping on such a low setting. And then also to help with warping, I always heat the back of the paper, and that kind of helps to uncurl it a little bit. But you can see that I barely got any warping with this vellum. All right, now I'm going to start with my watercoloring. I've got a brush here and a big jar of water. It doesn't really matter what kind of brush you use since you're filling the whole area. And with my palettes here, I like to wet my brush and dip it into my palette. And I always start with the lightest color first because your water tends to get a little bit dirty because these colors are so intense. And so I'm going to start off with the yellow, just dip a little bit of water into it, swirl it around, and these watercolors are very intense and they're pretty opaque. So I'm just going to color all the way around in these little areas. I'm not going to really worry about shading or anything like that. I just want it to be pretty color against the white. The white's going to really make the color pop. So I'm not going to worry about where it's heavy, where it's light. I'm just going to fully cover each of these flowers. Now this is my very favorite color in the whole set. I just love this turquoise color. So I'm going to do the same exact thing I did with the yellow, and I'm just going to color each of these petals. And then finally my darkest one is the purple. And you can see I had way too much water on my brush, and it's really easy with the vellum. You just take a dry tissue and pick it up, and the water will be completely removed and you can start all over again. So that's what's nice about watercoloring. You can always start over. Now vellum will curl up when it gets wet, but I kind of wanted that effect with these flowers because I want the flowers to pop up a little bit from the cardstock after I cut them out. So I'm going to let that dry. In the meantime, I'm going to work on the embossing folder. So I'm just going to take a piece of Neenah Solar White. I'm going to stick it in here into my embossing folder, which is retiring, and I think it retired yesterday. Unfortunately, I thought I was going to post this video earlier, but yes, this is a retired Stampin' Up! Embossing folder, and I just cut it in half with my paper trimmer, and I'm going to put one half on one side, and I'm going to try to line up the pattern as much as I can. And I made it extra large so that I could line up the pattern a lot more easily, and then I'll just trim off the excess with my scissor. I just find it's easier to make things a little bit larger and cut them back than to make it not large enough. Okay, so this next panel is about 3 1/4 inches wide by 5 1/2, and I'm going to take some Stampin' Up! Linen thread. It's my favorite thread. It's very pliable. It's very lightweight. I'm just going to put some tape runner on the other side of the cardstock. I'm going to roll this around about 3 times, and then I'll put my tape runner on the other side to adhere it. And then you can just kind of move it around as you need to. And then I'm going to make a bow, which I'll adhere later once I have all the other pieces on. Now for my sentiment, I'm getting it from the Altenew Floral Motif set. It's just a Feel Better Soon tiny little sentiment. And I inked it up on some Neenah Solar White cardstock with some VersaFine Black Onyx. And then I'm going to kind of just trim it off quickly on the left, and then I'll trim it on the top so it's the same amount of space on the top and bottom. Now I'm going to mark where I want my center of the banner to be, and then I'll measure 1/4 inch to the left of it and draw a line, and then I'll just cut it with scissor, and then that dot I made initially, I'm going to cut from each corner to that dot, and that'll create my banner. I'm going to adhere this right underneath my linen thread, and actually the first version of this card I stamped it directly to my panel, but I messed it up, so I created this banner to cover it up, and I liked the banner a lot more than actually stamping on the panel, so that's why in this one I decided to do the banner again. Alright, this is just some Scotch foam tape, and I'm going to adhere it on all sides of the 3 1/4 inch panel, and then I'll peel back the release tape, and then I'll center it on my card base. Now again, I made it a little bit longer, sometimes on purpose, sometimes on accident, and I just cut it with a scissor. I wanted to add some black in the middle of these flowers, and I wanted it to be really, really dark. So I grabbed my Sharpie and I'm just coloring in the dots here, and it worked perfectly. And now I'm going to cut each of these flowers out. There are matching dies for these flowers if you want to use those. I tend not to get the matching dies for stamp sets because you could just easily cut them out with a scissor most of the time. Okay, so I'm going to put these flowers on with some glue dots. So I'm just going to touch my flower to the glue dot and it'll stick. And I'm going to arrange them with the purple. I decided to just use one purple and put that in the middle. And notice I did yellow, blue, purple, yellow, blue instead of blue, yellow on the right side. And that's just because I wanted it to look a little bit more random. I didn't want there to be a pattern. So I just adhered my bow, and that is the end of the card for today. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I can't wait to see what you guys come up with using vellum. So I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.